The countdown is on to October 17th, the day that will go down in history as the day Canada becomes the second country in the world to legalize weed. It's a bit later than anticipated because cities and provinces asked for more time to prepare. The goal of the legislation is to stomp out the illegal black market. But in some jurisdictions where pot is legal, like Colorado, for example, the black market still thrives. So how do we track this and make sure legalization has its intended effect against organized crime? Joining me now in Toronto, Raf Sukar. He's the former Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP and served on the government's legalization task force. We also have to disclose he's currently the CEO of Aleafia Health, a medical cannabis company. Hi, Mr. Sukar. Nice to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Vash.
Okay, so from a law enforcement perspective, what has to be done over the next 4 months to make sure that the government's plan to cut out the black market actually works?
Well, there's lots of things that have to be done, and as I've said on numerous occasions, it's the heavy lifting that starts now. The framework of the legislation has been put in place, and now there are decisions to be made by provinces, by municipalities, as to locations, as to age of use, as to whether or not the number of plants that can be grown at home. So as long as the decisions are made that live within the spirit and intent of the legislation, it will be fine. It will be left in the realm of the provinces and municipalities. Now there is, from a law enforcement perspective, there is the impaired driving piece, of course, that is of concern to law enforcement. And of course there is the dispensaries, the illegal dispensaries that have been popping up everywhere and that are consuming much of the resources of law enforcement.
So I guess what is the most important? I mean, the government has said the point of this is to take this product out of the black market and move it into a legal one. What are the main challenges to that actually happening?
Well, the main challenges, one of them is education and awareness. So there has to be an education and awareness campaign that starts, and it has to be a robust one, educating our youth. We have one of the largest youth using populations in the world, in Canada. And so there's a lot of education and awareness that needs to be implemented. The illegal market, the illegal dispensaries that exist don't have the restrictions, the regulations that are put on them. For example, with us at Aleafia Health, we have a grow facility in Port Perry, which is heavily regulated by Health Canada. If you were to visit it, you would have to put on a mask, a hairnet, a gown, gloves, shoes would be changed. You would walk into a disinfectant pool before walking into any other grow rooms. So there's lots of regulations, very strict regulations, in order to ensure that the final product is free of pesticides and contaminants. What you get at the dispensary, of course, is not regulated in any way.
And so you think just that regulation alone will make the difference?
Well, what will make the difference is the education and awareness, so that consumers know what they're consuming, what they're putting in their bodies, so that they can stay away from the illegal dispensaries if they wish to consume, and go to a legal retail outlet that is heavily regulated by Health Canada.
We had Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale on the show just a little bit earlier, and I want to ask you about something he talked about. He said Canadians will just have to avoid looking suspicious if they want to cross the U.S. border once marijuana is legal. What do you think about that?
Well, the first piece of advice that I would give is not to lie to a law enforcement official when asked a question, number one. Number two, the U.S. is a sovereign country. The U.S. will do what they wish to do, remembering as well that they're on the trail of doing what we're doing here, except they're doing it at piecemeal. It's illegal, as you know, federally. It's legal in some states. And so I think the eyes of the world are on Canada right now and what we are doing. And so we need to get this right so that they can someday follow our system. What happens at the border, that's left to the United States. And as I said, they're a sovereign country, and they'll do what they will.
But I guess the problem for a lot of Canadians who might be partaking in the substance right now, or when it becomes legal, is I know you're saying obviously don't ever lie, but the minister, for example, said if he, it might be some advice to not smoke it 24 hours before or that kind of thing. Do you think that Canadians will have to amend their behavior, even though it's legal, in order not to be penalized at the border?
It's hard to say. Typically, what's asked at the border and what is verified at the border is whether or not an individual has a criminal record and not whether they have consumed cannabis in the last 24 hours or so. If you're impaired coming across the border, certainly you will not be allowed in the United States. If you have a criminal record, that may be an issue, so you would have to get that looked after. But whether or not you're consumed a legal substance in Canada, I'm not sure that would be a question that would be asked. It's left to be seen.
Okay. And I also wanted to, before I let you go, ask you about the idea of amnesty and pardons for Canadians who have possession records. It's obviously a political issue here. The government says they're not going to touch it until the new law actually comes into force. But do you think that's something they will have to address?
Hard to say, and I really haven't turned my mind to that. I do know that the industry itself, and there's been some push towards people with criminal records being involved in the industry. I could say to that it's a very tightly regulated industry, and the people that are involved in this industry now ought to be people that know and have a proven track record of living within the confines of a tightly regulated environment and law-abiding environment.